an empty tomb by itself proves almost nothing. It might have been the wrong tomb, though a quick check would have sorted that one out. Someone might have taken the body away for some reason or other. That was the conclusion Mary drew in John's Gospel. They've taken him away. That was the conclusion the Jewish leaders broadcast. Other ideas regularly advanced include: 1. Jesus didn't really die. Answer: Roman soldiers knew how to kill people. 2. When the women went to the tomb, they met someone else, and in the half light they thought it was Jesus himself. Answer: they would have noticed soon enough. 3. Jesus only appeared to people who believed in him. Answer: Thomas and Paul do not belong to this category. 4. The accounts we have are biased. Answer: so is all history, all journalism. Every photo is taken by somebody from some angle. 5. They began by saying, he will rise, he will be raised, and then this quickly passed into saying, he has been raised. Answer: no, they didn't. 6. Lots of people have visions of people who have just died. Answer: they knew about such visions and had language for them, and they wouldn't have used a term such as he has been raised from the dead in such instances. 7. They had a spiritual experience. Jesus was alive spiritually, and they were in touch with him. Answer: that is simply a description of a noble death followed by immortality. On the other hand, arguments advanced to support the resurrection from the dead include: 1. Jewish tombs, especially those of martyrs, were venerated and often became shrines. There is no sign whatever of that having happened with Jesus' grave. 2. The early church's emphasis on the first day of the week as their special day is very hard to explain unless something striking really did happen then. A gradual or sudden death or sudden dawning of faith is hardly sufficient to explain it. 3. The disciples were hardly likely to go out and suffer and die for a belief that wasn't firmly anchored in fact. This is an important point, though subject to the weakness that they might have been genuinely mistaken. One commentator argues, I don't have a good explanation for what happened to cause the empty tomb and the appearance, but I choose to maintain my belief that dead people don't rise, and therefore conclude that something else must have happened, even though we can't tell what it was. Such an argument is a matter of choice, not a matter of saying that science or history forces us to take that route. Far and away, the best historical explanation is that Jesus of Nazareth, having been thoroughly dead and buried, really was raised to life on the third day with a renewed body. When people say, but that can't have happened because we know that sort of thing doesn't actually happen, they are appealing to a would-be scientific principle of history, namely the principle of analogy. The problem with analogy is that it never quite gets you far enough. History is full of unlikely things that happen once and once only, with the result that analogies are often at best partial. Resurrection in the first century meant someone physically thoroughly dead, becoming physically thoroughly alive again, and not simply surviving or entering a spiritual world. The Easter stories tell us that the tomb was empty and that there really were sightings of Jesus, the same and yet transformed. History then says, so how do you explain that? And when Christian faith answers it, a sober, humble, questioning history may find itself saying, that sounds good to me. Thomas, like a good historian, wants to see and touch. Jesus presents himself to his sight and invites him to touch, but Thomas doesn't. Thomas transcends the type of knowing he had intended to use and passes into a higher and richer one. Thomas begins with doubt, and after the invitation to see and touch, suddenly a new, giddying possibility appears before him. And with that, Thomas takes a deep breath and brings history and faith together in a rush. My Lord, he says, and my God. This is not an anti-historical statement. The Lord in question is precisely the one who is the climax of Israel's history and the launch of a new history. This is not an anti-scientific statement. The world of new creation requires stewards to pay close, minute attention to that of which they are stewards. Faith in Jesus risen from the dead transcends but includes what we call history and what we call science. Faith of this sort is not blind belief, which rejects all history and all science. Rather, this kind of faith is faith in the Creator God, the God who promised to put all things to rest at the last, the God who raised Jesus from the dead within history, leaving evidence that demands an explanation from the scientists as well as anybody else. Thomas represents a faith which transcends but also includes historical and scientific knowledge. That is why, though the historical arguments for Jesus' bodily resurrection are truly strong, we must never suppose that they will do more than bring people to the questions faced by Thomas. Hope is when you get to suddenly realize that a different worldview is possible. A worldview in which the rich, the powerful, and the unscrupulous do not, after all, have the last word. Easter was when hope in person surprised the whole world by coming forward from the future into the present. The same worldview shift that is demanded by the resurrection of Jesus is the shift that will enable us to transform the world. Amen.